Welcome everyone to TechCentric, your one-stop shop for where your business and technology meets. Today is our first episode in a new series we're going to do called the Tech Leader Series. Our intent is to introduce you to various professionals and tell you a little bit about their career and how they got where they are, and answer questions about the path, things they would change along the way, things they've learned, all in an attempt to help you, the viewer, get some ideas for your own career path and where you may want to go. Today, we have Joshua Higginbotham with us. And I'm not going to tell you anything about Josh because Josh is going to do that for himself. So Josh, welcome to TechCentric. And I want to start with sort of what seems to be a foundation of your career. It's very different from a lot of folks that I've worked with in the tech industry. You had 13 or so years in the Kentucky Army National Guard. Tell me a little bit about what that was like and how being in the Army National Guard for all those years while growing your tech career was a unique experience for you.
Yeah, yeah. So, pretty much started like most people. I knew when I was growing up that I wanted to serve in some, public service role in some form, whether it was being a police officer or firefighter or going into the military. Majority of people in my family joined, and so when I got to that kind of age, I joined JROTC in high school to figure out, is this what I really want to do? I had brothers that joined around the same time as I did. And when it came time to choose the MOS, I looked at some really cool roles where it's like, oh, I want to go be a cryptologic linguist. That'd be really cool. And then
What's
then I met a
Oh,
girl
what's a
and
cryptologic linguist?
cryptologic linguist. So I get to go learn languages and then embed in local areas and just be kind of a part of the landscape, if you will.
Nice.
But as I was going through the recruiting process, I met a girl, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that. That's 2.5 years of training. Give me the shortest thing you got. And so the recruiter gave me cannon crew member, 13 Bravo artillery, which has no relation to the civilian sector one bit. But shortest training, and I get to blow stuff up when I'm out training. So for a 17-year-old kid, that was kind of what I went with. I joined in 2006 when I was a junior in high school. Shipped out to basic training on my birthday in 2007. Um, Spent some time both in active duty status within the National Guard, working for recruiting, doing various orders throughout, even deploying to Djibouti, Africa, in the Horn of Africa for about 10 months to a year. All of this when I'm working in like operation logistics type roles. I was working for a company based out of Shepherdsville, Kentucky, doing their like invoicing and shipping. But what that afforded me was to understand more about the business and some of the things that ran the business. Why is it important that we look at certain metrics to define the performance of a department, the performance of a employee, things like that. And uh, that's where I started to kind of pick up some of those technology type scenarios where I was starting to build reports in SQL.
Mhm.
Uh, but around that time, I was deploying, so I had to take a year off and go do what we did. And then during that time, though, I was able to afford some time towards training. Deployments are deployments, they will be what they will. But there were times where I could kind of keep up with stuff and try to figure out kind of what did I want to do. Because at that point, I was thinking, do I want to stay in operations? Do I want to go do a career change? In that case, like I thought I was going to go down the medical field,
Oh,
just again trying to be a public servant. Okay, yeah, the Army's going to run its course. Do I go and do something in the medical field? Um, but when I came back, I had kind of built some of these skills needed to be able to do things in SQL. Didn't really know what it would kind of come to. I just knew that that's what I needed to be able to do my job later on when I came back. Um, one of the benefits of joining the military is you kind of build processes and like it's a very structured way of learning. We crawl, we then walk, and then we run.
mhm.
And so I kind of took that same kind of foundation that was set early on in my career in the military and kind of put it to the same type of approach within technology. I don't have a collegiate background in IT. Um, and so I had to kind of learn as I went. And this was pre AI and
Hmm.
ChatGPT. Like a lot of the knowledge was on the internet or it was out in the community. And, I would love to touch on that in the future during this conversation.
Oh, we're good.
Um, um, but taking that same approach is kind of how I've approached my whole career. I find something in an area that I like to look at, and then I start off and I find that kind of use case, that need,
Mhm.
that real world scenario, and then I go try to build something against that. And I'm okay with taking it a little bit slower and building it as like a POV MVP, where it's like, yeah, this may not be production worthy, but I get the concepts. Now let's start to layer in some of that more productionalized logic until we get to the ability to run and actually deploy things and build it out. And it's done me well.
Awesome. Well, and one thing you didn't talk about a lot there is, I know you personally, and I know what you do currently in your career, and there's a variety of leadership responsibilities in that. But it looks like early on in your career, one of your first opportunities for leadership was as a section crew chief in the Guard.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious, are there lessons you learned as a section crew chief around team cohesion and communication and discipline that has sort of carried forward into your professional career that would be useful to folks who are listening?
Definitely. In the military, when you rank up, there is a professional development series that you have to go through. During my time, there was a mixture of virtual and in-person training.
Okay.
So, like, you would go through some virtual training ahead of time, just make sure that you had some of the things ready to go to the actual schoolhouse. But when I made sergeant, I had to go through and go to it was called Warrior Leader course at that time. I think it's changed names. It was BLC at one point.
Mhm.
Army loves its acronyms.
Yep.
Same thing when I made staff sergeant. I had to go to advanced leaders course, and those were not short stints. I think the warrior leader course was 2.5, 3 weeks. Advanced leader course was a month, and that's also while serving as a civilian, or being a civilian on
Yep.
I had a full time job at the time.
Yep.
I was actually working as a database administrator at the time that I went to advanced leaders course. Not the easiest thing to step away a month
Mhm.
for to go do that. But the army teaches from the ground up, where from the beginning that your soldiers are your number one priority.
Mhm.
You take care of your soldiers, you ensure that they have what is needed to be able to deliver on the mission, and that everybody understands their job. The kind of age old saying is one up, two down, and it's natural succession. And not to talk about the reasoning behind that, but it's evident. We're in the military. There are things that happen. We have to be prepared to step up if needed. And so what it does is it builds a very strong team, especially as a section chief in a artillery unit. Our team had to be kind of that well-oiled machine because we're working with highly explosive materials. Like we're working with things that go boom.
Mhm.
And so every individual needs to know how to operate the machine in every single role. We rotate through those roles. We do what I like to call role playing, where even with even non-live rounds, we're going to go through the motions. We may not be loading actual rounds. It's your fake putting a round um, into a breach, all those types of things. But what it has afforded is this kind of concept that I've formed in my head of, we train as we fight, we train as we do, and we prepare for the inevitable. Meaning, when I was a database administrator, I needed to go in and build solutions that allow me to test things that you don't typically get a test. Like Paul Randall at one point had, I think it's still out there, where he's got a corrupted database that you can restore so you can test how to resolve the corruption.
Mhm.
It's like your worst nightmare as a DBA.
Mhm.
Well, how do you introduce that and kind of role play that in a safe way so you know how to act when an event occurs?
Mhm.
But it was definitely foundational to the way that I approach things. I pride myself in the way that I interact with people. I try to be somebody that people can look up to and like, hey, I need help in this area. Let's go talk to Josh. Hey, I'd love to help you, but I'm not the right person. Let me go send you over to this person that is a little bit more capable of that. And trying to really be that servant leadership kind of model that I grew my career from.
Awesome. You know, You also mentioned being a DBA a couple of times and early in your career, and I know you did some software development as well and some BI work. Obviously, at this point, you are deep and focused in your career on the data side.
Mhm.
What what kind of drove you there? Was there a specific moment or a project or an incident in the course of your career where you went and said, "I found my passion and my path. This is where I'm
Mhm.
going."
Yeah, so my transition from like operations and IT was happenstance or happy stance, whatever that term
Mhm.
is. Uh, I got lucky that I had conversations with the right people at the right time. Meaning, I was working in logistics. I was lucky enough that I had a good mentor and friend that worked for the company that I worked for
Mhm.
that was willing to put in the extra time to teach me SQL.
Yep.
And around the time that I was starting to feel good about, my ability to write SQL, build reports, we had a tech support role opening it up at the company. And so I reached out and said, "Hey, I'd like to take that position."
Mhm.
Um, I was very lucky that my current manager, who I'd worked with for years, knew that I was capable and knew that I needed to move on. Like I'd done that role for a long time. It wasn't what I was gonna um, want to do for the rest of my career. And so she put in a recommendation and allowed me to go into tech support. I think I was there like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And again, another kind of like um, perfect timing scenario where we were acquired by a company and the head of IT at that time wanted to get back into software development and he moved to our location in Kentucky and he needed a junior resource to be able to help him and provide coverage within our software stack, if you will. And he was willing to teach me. And so for I think about 6 months, we worked side by side, him teaching me how to write .NET, do things in SQL Server. There was a period where I had to do some Micro Focus COBOL because our WMS system was written in Micro Focus
I'm
COBOL.
so sorry.
Um, I was never that good at it. I didn't really, care for it too much, but it was part of that kind of that role.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the individual that was doing that coaching passed away right around 6 months in. Really good mentor, and but I went from the junior resource to now the most senior resource. And now it's a shared capacity model to now I need to do it all. And now I need to learn not only to be a software engineer, but I have to make sure that I'm writing performant code that doesn't put load on these systems. Well, one way that I knew how to do that was to start to look at some of the metrics behind what we were running. So getting into some of the telemetry behind the scenes, if you will. So like looking at wait stats, looking at load on the servers,
So
leveraging some of the tools.
all your time as a
So
DBA
starting to
running
kind
that.
of bridge into the DBA stuff.
Yeah.
And I really loved it. I got to mess around with Oracle at that time as well because all of our WMS was on Oracle. We didn't have DBAs on staff.
Mhm.
We were a very lean company. And so it was kind of a side of desk responsibility that I really gravitated
Mhm.
towards. I like being a software engineer. I still kind of dabble in that side just to kind of keep up my skills in that area. And really as a data person, the line is starting to get fuzzy between software engineering and data engineering and the same principles that I followed as a software engineer, I'm now starting to follow as a data engineer or a data architect.
Mhm.
So that's beneficial that I've been able to kind of keep to that. Um, Around that time, though, I knew that for me to really scale my career, I was probably going to have to make a job change. And I'm beyond thankful and appreciative to the company that I worked for because like they invested in me heavily early on. And I, still talk to that team, still keep up with them, because of that, because it gave this random kid that had no background in IT a chance to do this. Um, but I knew that I would need to do something. Didn't really know where to start. That's when I started to get involved in the user group in my area. So we had a local SQL Server user group
Mhm.
that was starting to talk about being a database administrator. And that was kind of what I was wanting to do. So I started to attend that. I think within 3 visits, I met my next hiring manager. They were happening to be hiring a data engineer, and this was at community bank. So it's like, I understand that, while I'm very appreciative of this company, I need to go into an area of business that is different from like the fulfillment industry. I need to go somewhere that's highly regulated.
Hmm.
So I get that kind of breadth of experience of like, how do you operate in a secure environment that's highly regulated? What better than a bank?
Hmm.
Especially as a DBA within a bank where there's a team. So I'm no longer the single developer. Now I'm a team within a team of database administrators, so I can learn best practices and have that kind of guidance and all that. So I was lucky enough to get that opportunity. Um, Scale, kind of process through database administration. Because I was a software engineer before, I built tooling for our team to be able to automate some of the work that we were doing that was previously manual. This was around the time some pretty cool tools were coming out in the area to kind of support that. So,
Cool.
um, yeah.
So, and I'm glad you mentioned the Louisville data community, because at a certain point, you took on a leadership role in that community,
Mhm.
and I'm just curious, what caused you to want to take that on specifically? Why the drive to do that? Did it have something to do with the career pathing, and you still wanted to have a job where you gave back to the community?
Exactly. My career, I owe it to various individuals and companies that have given me opportunity. On paper, I didn't always look good. I was just some random person that, either met the needs or didn't. It was because, I had a peer in the community that knew my capabilities and took a chance,
Mhm.
or they provided their own time outside of their busy day to teach me in certain things.
Mhm.
And so getting involved in the community, whether it was speaking or co-leading a user group, was kind of a way to kind of give back to that. Like, I don't want to just accept from the universe, if you will. I want to give back to it. Again, I'm floored that I was ever able to make it as far as I have in IT, and I still got a long career ahead of me. But the user group is a great place for you to kind of get started and then continue to grow. You start to see early on where the industry is going. Like, part of the reason why I started to bring on Python, when I was at that community bank, I moved from being a database administrator to a data services manager. That's when I started to get into the business intelligence space, managing ETL developers and data analysts and Power BI developers, things like that. But because of what I was seeing in the community, I started to notice that people were starting to talk more about Python
Mhm.
and PySpark and those types of things. And it quickly became evident that in the future, as we started to modernize and move to Azure or any other cloud environment, that Python would probably be in some form of our tech stack.
Yep.
So how do we start to adapt to that early on? And it was from the community that I started to learn how to kind of frame that and bring it in, even though we were not in the cloud. So the team would be capable of writing Python and PySpark.
Yep.
And then when we would make the move to the cloud, we would be ready. The community is kind of really what set that precedence for me.
Excellent. So all that work you did in the community, in my mind, kind of led to two things, and they're kind of interrelated. One, it led to you doing a lot more public speaking,
Mhm.
but it also led to you becoming a Microsoft Data Platform MVP 5-ish years ago. And sort of, which came first here, the chicken or the egg, right? Like the MVP award has been a big feather in your cap, but did you have to become a prolific speaker before you became an MVP, or was it a natural offshoot of becoming an MVP that you started doing more of that?
No, so the way that I've approached it, and those that sustain the MVP award, they're not driven by it. So my goal was never to become an MVP. My goal was to share my knowledge and to support the community, stand people up beside me.
Mhm.
You know, it, I try to live by the motto, it takes a village.
Mhm.
Whether it's with an organization or a community, like, you're not going to truly excel as an organization, a team, a group, by yourself. And And so a lot of it was me teaching to share knowledge. It was to grow my network so that way when, I needed to help somebody out, they knew who to reach out to in this area. I think that's the biggest value to the community is I don't need to know everything, but I know somebody that does.
Yep.
Like I'm struggling in this function or, I've got an issue at work. I know to call this person because they're really good at Hyper-V or they're really good at PySpark, Databricks, Fabric, whatever it may be. Um, so I never went into it for that. I was lucky enough that, some people within the community felt that I had kind of achieved or had met the kind of like requirements, if you will, while there's no defined requirements on it, but that my intentions were, well and right, meaning that I wasn't motivated by that, and that I truly kind of, uh, what's the word? Embodied the model that is what we expect out of our MVP team or our MVP peers, and was rewarded. And now I have to maintain my community involvement because that's really what the MVP is. It's a community-based reward that Microsoft provides due to your impact within the community. Any MVP that is out there, they earned it through giving back to the community. They're not paid for anything that they do. They're sharing their knowledge for free. They're doing it for the right reasons. But then what it does allow us is we get access to the product teams at Microsoft. We get to help shape the products that we then get to turn around and evangelize. I had been working with Microsoft Fabric before its preview days when it was under its project name. Um, Getting to work with the product teams, getting to give that feedback. Going to the big conferences to support like expert meetup booths, which has just helped my career tremendously,
Mhm.
and allowed me to really, become a subject matter expert in platforms like Microsoft Fabric, which I don't think I would have been able to achieve otherwise.
Okay. So, I mean, the lesson there seems to be if you aspire to be an MVP, don't aspire to be a solid contributor and advocate for the community, and something like that may happen organically.
Yeah, and the way I look at it, if you are going into it to be an MVP, you will never sustain it. It is a long-term commitment, and it's a commitment that you have to hit every single year. So I go through an annual renewal, and it's not that I get to just do the same thing every single year. There has to show maturing of myself as a contributor
Mhm.
over time. And so if you are approaching it without the right motivation, then you're going to fail. You're going to achieve it one year, you're going to lose it the next. You're not going to be able to sustain it. And so, keeping that true value of why you do what you do, like I go out there to share my knowledge and help grow people, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I love being an MVP and I hope I can be renewed as long as I can. But if tomorrow that's no longer an option for me, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing and still continue to share my knowledge.
Awesome. Well, and a portion of that, one of the ways that you do that is you speak in public quite a bit. You do public training sessions, you go to big conferences and speak on some pretty complex topics. For someone who's trying to get started in that space, even if maybe they're a little bit uncomfortable with it, right? Let's face it. I'm a tech geek. You're a tech geek. Generally, public speaking isn't something that comes natural to us. I mean, I know that's a bit of
Yeah.
uh, a generalization, but it's generally true.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who wants to give back to the community and knows part of that is I've got to get out there and speak to get them started and sort of get over their discomfort or their fear?
Really two things. One, start local or start small. Don't try to go straight to a big conference. There's the way that the selection process is, it's not typically based off of you being a big name. Like you can go and submit to FabCon, and as long as your abstract shows value, like why should somebody go to this session? You can be selected. I've seen first time speakers get selected for that kind of thing. But now that's putting undue stress on yourself.
Yep.
And so the way I started is I spoke at my local user group. The organizers of that group met with me ahead of time to kind of walk me through how they approach building sessions and content. they also kind of coached me and allowed me to kind of dry run those sessions before I got to it. And even then, I spoke on a topic called BIML,
Oh,
Business Intelligence
wow.
Markdown Language. Very technical topic,
Uh-huh.
very dry topic.
Uh-huh.
And even with all of that preparation, I still had one person fall asleep in the very front of front of the room.
Mhm.
Even worse, it was my boss's boss.
Oh, jeez.
It's like, oh no, I'm not gonna have a job after this. But but I didn't let that deter me. Like, even though, like, yeah, that kind of like, oh, that stinks. I took it for what it was, and I adapted
Mhm.
the way that I spoke. Because at that point, I'm a new speaker. I am going to read very dry. I'm going to be shaky in my voice, all those different things. The only way you're going to get better is to just keep doing it.
Mhm.
You know, repetition is what matters here. You will learn your own tone and the way that you present.
Mhm.
Everybody's got their own presentation style. I've learned like what mine is. I'm a um, humorous kind of guy. I try to be lighthearted, and so that's how I kind of approach any session I give. I kind of goof off at the front. I try to interact with um, the audience throughout. I really love presenting in person. Virtual is what it is, but you just don't get that same interaction like you can when you're in a room full of people.
Mhm.
You see how people are reacting to the things that you're saying, and you're adapting and you're changing to that. And there's programs out there that, maybe you don't have a local user group. There's virtual groups. There's a great one called New Stars of Data, where the organizers are their goal is to try to bring up new speakers in the community because we have to ensure that there is new content coming in and new speakers, and we want diversification in what is being said and who are within the speaker pool.
Mhm.
So the new stars of data model is you cannot have spoken at a large conference to be a speaker at new stars of data.
Okay.
I actually have some peers from Centric Consulting that have gone through the New Stars of Data program.
Oh.
But you are paired with a mentor. That mentor is somebody that is a seasoned speaker within the community, and they work with you over the span of a month or two to get up to speed with speaking and they help you to build your content out to be ready for presentation. And then that is all done virtual, and even then, the organizers of New Stars of Data started to partner with other bigger conferences, like Past Data Community Summit that runs out of Seattle every year. They actually have a new speaker track now
Okay.
where it's dedicated to new speakers, so they have the opportunity to go to a big conference and speak. And again, it's all thanks to community members that this isn't their full-time job. These are people that are, doing this on the side just because they believe in doing all that.
That's some good resourcing. I hope folks are taking notes out there. So I want to kind of pivot a bit into how your public presence has evolved. And you've actually spoken over a series of years, and it's kind of evolved over that time. Early days, you were talking a lot about SQL Server, and then as
Mhm.
Azure became more prominent, you were talking about Azure migrations. And these days, you are pretty much one of the most prolific voices on Fabric that I've seen. You talk about it all the time. You get reached out to frequently by Microsoft to be a guest speaker in places. Can you describe a little bit your process for how you've stayed ahead of the curve technologically over the course of your career and kind of anticipated, okay, SQL Server is not going to be the thing anymore. It's migrations, or nope, it's not that anymore.
Mhm.
Fabric's where I need to focus my attention and get educated.
Yeah, so it's a mixture of I'm a nerd at heart, and I'll find a technology that really kind of lights me up,
Mhm.
and I'll focus towards that. Like, one of the best ways to learn is to teach, to be honest.
Okay.
Because if you can teach it, it means that you have to be somewhat advanced with it. While the community is a very forgiving group at times, you're not going to get in front of a big group and have read over the cliff notes of a product and be good,
Mhm.
and so but you're right. I started off speaking on business intelligence markdown language, did some stuff in SQL Server. For a period, was talking about GitHub. because that was around the time that GitHub was purchased by Microsoft, and everybody was starting to try to like,
Yep.
where does this slot into the enterprise? It used to be this big open source thing. Now we're seeing companies start to adopt it. Those are things, it's because I've kind of gone over time and found the right voices within the community to follow,
Mhm.
either through newsletters or LinkedIn. And not always been right. And no shade, if you will, on Verigence and business intelligence markdown language.
Mhm.
During a period, it solved some big problems for me when I was working at that bank. As I moved to the cloud and moved towards the Spark environments, that no longer was kind of a focus and no longer provided the same value. And so I shifted my attention.
Yep.
So I typically speak on things that excite me because I'm going to spend a lot more of my time learning it and going in depth to it.
Mhm.
It's also looking at technologies that are coming out and seeing where I can fit within it. While I don't always try to be like a single speaker in that area, I do want to be diversified within my peers. So I start to look at all the other speakers within the community and what they're speaking on, and I try to find those gaps. That way, hopefully, if you come to one of these events, you're able to get kind of an end-to-end perspective on a product. Um, and you see that if you go to SQL Saturdays or Data Saturdays or these local user groups, there is a kind of a constant group that you will see. These are typically MVPs that are going around the US and the world that are speaking, and you start to learn what they're speaking on, and you kind of fit that puzzle. You kind of create that puzzle piece that kind of fits into the broader puzzle. That's kind of been my approach.
So at this point, I mean, your career has kind of spanned, the parallels with the Army National Guard, a lot of work for individual organizations. But recently, and you just referenced them, you've gotten into the world of consulting. Uh,
Mhm.
as you've gotten into the world of consulting, and now you are definitely much more on the side of being a solution designer and more of a thought leader that's out there trying to enlighten people on how you can solve a problem with technology and then make it real. How have
Mhm.
you seen your thought processes shift? From the days of being a DBA, where you were very technically focused and sort of, I guess, on a disk profile, you were very C oriented, to now you have to be a bit more DI oriented to really get
Mhm.
creative and design solutions.
That's actually a good call because I think that was what I think that's what I am right now as a DI within the disc survey or whatever. No, yeah, I part of what drove me to consulting was I really love solving problems for people.
Mhm.
I find a lot of internal value when somebody is struggling with something and going through a process with them side by side, and then you can look and you see that aha moment when it finally clicks with them, or it's like, oh no, I'm on fire, please put me out, and can jump in to kind of do that. Try to be that, helping hand, if you will. Um, so one of the things, given my background, and I've met some people over my career that I've tried to like achieve too. Like there are those people that I can sit there and look at them talk, and it's like they get it. That's who I want to be. Like I've had director levels and SVP levels that you know you'll ask them a question about a design. There was this one where we were trying to figure out how do we modernize this platform, and I'm used to SVPs not like being kind of removed from that,
Yeah.
rightfully so. That's just not their focus. And this SVP drew it all out on a whiteboard, and I just looked. I'm like, yeah, he's right. And it's like I want to be that. And so because I started off in operations, I understood the business side of things. And while I was not the best .NET developer in the world, when I built products, I built them purpose built for the
Mhm.
business, knowing what their capabilities were. I don't need to go out and build this in-depth flashy UI because that's not what they're asking for. They want something as seamless as I scan a product, it tells me what bin to put it in, and they place it into the bin. Those types of things. I don't need this highly complex system to be able to do that. When I moved into being, like a DBA, I learned the back end infrastructure and the impact of writing poor code.
Hmm.
I can go write select star from this table all day long and it functionally will work, but behind the scenes, everything's on fire.
Hmm.
So then when I got into the data side, what is the impact um, of handling things downstream? So there's an issue that happened upstream. Now I'm living with it downstream. How do I kind of correct those things? And there's a vastness of things that I've learned because of that. But what it's allowed me to do is learn all the different components of building a platform. So even when I'm designing a data platform for analytics,
Hmm.
I know what it takes to build a platform on the front end
Yep.
of that, the upstream of that. And it kind of allows me to think about things holistically. And as a solution architect, you have to be a visionary of a sense. You have to be visionary in the way that you're approaching this. I'm not building a platform for today, I'm building a platform for the future.
Hmm.
I also need to make sure that it's sustainable, not only by my peers that are consultants, but my peers that are in the industry. I don't want to build a platform that then now they're locked into me. And so, how do I work with them to not only design it to meet their needs, but also they are a part of that decision and part of that design so that they have that kind of level of ownership?
Hmm.
Um, and again, because again, I approach these things is that I want to, be that servant leader and see that aha moment. Like I try to take a very intentional effort to teaching and guiding throughout that. This is why we care about this. This is why we approach it in this way,
Hmm.
rather than here's a reference architecture, now go do it.
Yep. It's interesting. There's been a thread, a very common thread through all of your answers, and if I were to sort of put a label on it, it would be you seem to be a bit of a mission-oriented technologist, and your mission seems to be twofold. Number one, to solve problems that help people, and number two, in general, just help the community, help people. It's sort of your
Mhm.
focal point is how is what I'm doing giving back in some way, shape, or form? Is that sort of a defining underpinning of your career that kind of gives it purpose to you and makes it, worth doing, or is there more to it than that?
No, it really is that, and like I wasn't always that way. We all mature.
Yep.
Like when 20-year-old Josh is vastly different than what I am today, and my motivations have changed over the years, and some of that is I've aged and I've had loss within family and friends and all that. I realize what really does matter. Like at the end of the day, and it's going to be a cliche statement, but when your time comes, it doesn't matter what your title was, what your salary was. It's the impact that you had on others really matters.
Mhm.
Not that I may not know the difference at that time, but like my hope is that people are surrounded thinking of the good of Josh, not like, well, man, that guy was selfish and all he cared about was the flashy titles and all that. And
Mhm.
um, again, I wouldn't have a career I would be able to provide for my family if it wasn't for people that had that same mindset.
Mhm.
And so, every once in a while, I need somebody to, kind of bop me over the head and say, get back in order.
Yep.
You know what this is about. Start living it again. But I try to keep to it. It's how we build strong teams. It's how we build sustainable organizations. Again, if you are the superhero, you will fall at some point,
Yep.
and you don't want that to impact your team or your business. And I've failed at that at times, and I try to like um, pinpoint that or look at that and then try to reflect and be like, all right, I should have handled that differently, or going forward, I should approach it differently.
Awesome. I like that point of view. And it's not one that I have heard with tremendous frequency in the IT
Mhm.
space, but I hope to hear it a lot more. Closing question for you. So, I mean, obviously your career has kind of spanned quite a bit. If you were giving advice to your younger self, getting into your career, is there any advice that you would give them or that you wish somebody else would have given you at the time that would have been helpful along the way to get you where you are today a little bit easier?
Uh, Again, it's going to sound cliche. I think one of the things that I struggled with early on, and I still like you got the imposter syndrome that everybody suffers from. Doesn't matter if you're in IT, business, whatever it may be. Um, I think my biggest struggle was that I didn't give myself enough grace at times,
Mhm.
where it's like I felt like I needed to be somewhere in my career at a certain point, and because I hadn't hit that, I'm a failure in my mind, not knowing or not understanding that an individual that hit that title or hit that accolade by this date and time in their career is a completely different person. Their situation's completely different. And I've been lucky enough that I've had family members and friends that have bought me over the head and say, Josh, like, slow down,
Yep.
look at it in a bigger picture. And um, it's your career, it's your journey, and it's going to map out the way that it maps out. And you know, if you can step back for a minute, reflect, and look at where you're going, you'll understand that it's the right path to be on, or it's not, and you will adjust, and that will be what it is. So I think that's it. It's really, give yourself grace. You got a long career ahead of you,
Mhm.
and you don't need to make, I wanted to be CIO one day, and I hope one day I'll, achieve that role, not because of title. Mainly, I love growing teams and building teams.
Mhm.
So it's not the title itself, it's just that kind of overarching responsibility that you've got, the ability to lead a team.
Mhm.
But you don't have to hit that, early on in your career. Set the goals and set a plan and just give yourself some grace.
Excellent. I like that. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, everybody watching learned a little bit along the way. And thank you all out there. Please join us for our next episode. We'll be trying to put a couple of these out a month. And we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks, everybody.